Okay, welcome everyone to the RBA interest rate decision for December. Now, just as I get started, the main thing to remember here is this statement, or this is their last meeting until February next year. They don't meet in the middle of in January at all. So I like to give themselves a decent holiday. Just looking at the some of the betting here. This is the interest rate decision itself. No change. Pretty much even money there. Increase $21 by 0.26 or more to 51. That should be a lot more. Decrease by smalls $12 and decrease by 0.26 $21. I mean, we have a look at the bookies because they're usually spot on, and that would suggest, as the market is expecting, no change of interest rates at all. Okay, so what you want to now what we can do is come back over here and look at the actual situation. So when I was just looking at the one there, just seeing what was happening with that. If you had seen the preview this morning, it was down around this sort of level. I was expecting this sort of move down was just more sentiment, like, you know, the one being included in the IMF basket. And then sure enough, it's rallied back, well, not exactly to where it was, but it has corrected most of that move. All right, now we've had some Chinese data come and go. I'll say the CAC, but it's not the way you pronounce it. 48.6, a little bit stronger than expected. The manufacturing PMI number was slightly weaker, so really they sort of net out. But that didn't stop the Aussie jumping up from sort of 40 odd, or around 35. It was actually 32, I think, this morning when the current account and the building approvals data came out. Now these building approvals numbers are pretty low tier. But then you put it into the framework of where this economy is, and a lot about housing. It did actually have a pretty good impact. I mean, it was sort of limited to like a 5 or 6, 7 point move, but then it slowly started to squeeze. Looked like the market was short Aussie, hoping this trend line would hold. And unfortunately for them, it's already been up into the 80s. So a lot of the stop losses have already been cleaned out to the top side. Doesn't mean we go back there, but what it does is it flushes out a lot of the buying that would happen above that trend line has already taken place, right? So it's going to be a bit more of a fresher move to the top side. Now, obviously the RBA decision, as you can see, if I just double click on this, we should get some more details. There's no change in the actual rates expected. It's not coming up. So with that, it really comes back down to, this is actually understanding the whole situation and the way this stuff's rolled out. It comes back to the actual RBA decision. Who's just turned their speakers on? All right, so what we need to do is just have a look at this statement. Now, I've got the previous one here. You can actually come through and have a look at the way they change their terminology. Now, if you go through June, July, August, you'll find that most of these are exactly the same, word for word in that fact. This isn't a situation where they get marked on, you know, plagiarizing things. If the economy doesn't change, they don't change the wording. There's no need to. All right, that means they're doing their job. So if you come through their previous announcement, there's a couple of things that you can really highlight. One for me was down here, sort of starting at this point. Members also observed that an outlook for inflation may afford scope for further easing of policy. Right, should that be appropriate? Okay, so what you want to see is, you want to see any dovish comments like that. So is there scope for further easing? If there isn't, it's like an interest rate hike. That means they're further away from cutting rates, and that is a positive for the Aussie, and the Aussie will go up. And the main thing here, and hence whether the current stance of policy will most effectively foster sustainable growth and inflation consistent with the target. So what you have to sort of read here is almost between the lines, right? If they've got scope for further easing, well, that means they're sort of, you know, potentially could cut rates. If that's taken out, well, then the whole situation is off the board. Now, you go back through the last bunch of economic numbers out of Australia for the last month, they've all been pretty strong. Employment numbers were crazy strong, and that filtered in through a lot of other numbers. Now, commodities have been weaker, but it's offset by, you know, almost a recovery, not a recovery, but like a micro recovery in the Australian economy, and it does seem pretty good. The numbers coming out, the RBA will be happy with regards the housing market's come off about, the slowest increase or biggest fall in the last 5 years, which is no surprise. It's come off some pretty hefty levels. So that's doing their job there too. So the housing market's coming back down, which does potentially give them room to cut rates, but I don't think they're in a really cutting mode. Now, there's one other piece of the equation here. Now, we are talking about the RBA, but don't forget the Fed are still expected to hike in December. Now, that's pretty much factored in. So if this comes out strong, I mean, if there's no scope for further easing, then this thing could very easily keep moving to the top side, right? That's the whole situation. Then you can have a look through here. What they generally do is they'll come out here with the actual decision, which we expect to be the same. They talk about the global economy. They'll talk about the Fed, the next big thing. They usually talk a bit about China. It actually was probably taken out of this one, but they've gone straight into Australia. So obviously the Fed start increasing probably over the rate, but some of the major central. So I'm just sort of quickly reading through this. Global financial conditions remain accommodative. They may mention something about China in there. In saying that, the last 3 or 4 weeks, China's numbers have been, haven't had much out, so there hasn't been much of a change. Like their manufacturing numbers are slowly weakening bit by bit, so it doesn't look like it's dramatic, but if you look where it was like a year ago, they are much weaker. Now that is still something that the RBA has got to consider. So there's a lot of things that go into this statement. Usually it's one of these last couple of sentences that is the key component to what the market will do. Now, if you were unfortunate enough to be still trying to trade around that Melbourne Cup day last month, you would have seen some crazy moves. It went from like 70, 75 down to 20, back up to like 10, the big figure above, and then back down again. It was all over the place. Be careful. If there's not clarity in this statement, right, in this thing here, stay out of it. If you see it run to one side, don't assume that that's correct, because it can turn around very quickly. All right, so you got here, like, monetary policy needs to be accommodative. Low interest rates are acting to support borrowing and spending. Overall conditions are still quite accommodative. I'm just trying to highlight some of the key things that could potentially be changed. If you come back here, one of the easiest things to do is, even if you print them off, right, get the one previous to this. Okay, see, this is the one before October. Oh, this is on October for November. Okay, it's got exactly the same paragraph there. Actually, pretty much the whole thing. Actually, if I just have a look at that, the whole thing down to there is exactly the same. I'll just go back to that. Okay, and you have a look through that and just get out your highlighter. I think the only thing extra in there is inflation is low and should remain so, with the economy likely to have a degree of spare capacity for some time. Okay, that's probably the key sentence. That wasn't in the one before. They've put that in there. But a bit lower. Okay, target over the next 1 or 2. So they don't expect inflation to be doing anything over the next 2 years. Members also noted outlook may afford scope for further easing, right? So there's a bit of a contradiction here with the inflation outlook. Anyway, that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to be focusing on that one sentence. If that's not there, I will buy Aussie, even if it's a little bit higher, right? That's the key thing. Now, obviously, we're sitting above a technical level. Let's move T-Rex. So it's going to get a little bit messy. Or not messy, it's just not as clear as day, because the break here is around 58, and we're already above it. It'll be a nice move to the downside if they did come out with something dovish, which I find very highly unlikely. But that's what we sort of got. Now, if I just shrink the chart up, we can have a look exactly where the levels are. Okay, as you can see, the top side here is a little bit barren. Okay, this is the situation if you are into, say, Fibonacci's, for instance. You could throw a few up here, or even just come back here. The market will look at what the previous high was. If I can just, what's going on with my, okay, if I just get this thing here. Okay, look at the high from that last big run to the downside. Okay, and it comes in. Okay, now let me just shrink it up. Where's the... Okay, the next major level is 73.80. So it's got a huge amount of room here to move to the top side. Bear in mind, the Fed isn't released until the morning of the 17th or the 16th in New York. So we've got a fair bit of time here with this. December the 3rd, we've got 2 days before the ECB are expected to cut. or do further easing, don't forget that's factored in. So there's a good chance of a relief rally. If these guys are aggressive, then we will see a decent move to the top side, and it's got 120 points before it hits anything. And don't forget, that's just a previous high. Okay, so we've got that one. Now let's just come over here and have a look at Aussie yen. So we've got a couple of opportunities here. All right, there's another trend line here. Let me just make sure I've got them all. Okay, so there's sort of another secondary trend line, support line here on the downside as well. But you've got this, it's just going through this level. Now, if I come back to the top here, okay, you can see exactly where that starts, 96.96. It comes over here, gives us a level here around 89.80. Okay, 60 points to the top side. If that breaks to the top side, don't forget we're already above the cloud, and it is in an upward sort of projection, okay, suggesting it's going to keep going higher. Dollar yen seems to think it's going higher as well, so that sort of points to a higher Aussie yen. If I just come back down here and get some more data, there's not much more. There's a high going back over here. I'll have to go back to the dailies actually. Let me just get this trend line here in. Get on there. Okay. All right. So if I just blow that back up, okay, you're not going to see those levels at the moment, but we are back down below the trend line. If this was breaking through the cloud and the trend line at the same time, I'd be very happy to be getting in. At this stage, it still could be a good opportunity to get some Aussie yen on board. And what I might do is just trim this up. So to do that, I'm just going to place get T-Rex set up. Aussie yen. Okay, I've got those two things set. So when I place an order here, if I trade live, I will have a position running on a couple of these puppies. All right. Okay. So that's where we are now. Actually, one thing I need to do here, I can actually save this template. If I just go in here, OCO breakout, say I want to, well, actually, I'm just going to trade live. I'm actually not going to place a breakout order. So false alarm there, guys. I was going to place a breakout both sides, but actually I'm waiting to see the data. This is one thing where the statement, it's like a speech. It can be quite ambiguous. So you want to make sure for real that the damn thing is going, okay, before you start throwing sort of cash around this thing. Okay, so I think Nick was just saying just before we started, the top side, the market is short all these currency pairs. That's why they were sort of squeezing higher. That's why these little moves up are getting a little bit more aggressive and quicker, because the market's continually getting short, thinking that ECB are going to cut, the Fed are going to hike, these currencies come off. Now, this is the crux of the whole situation. This is now the RBA's perspective on their interest rates. If they are coming back towards almost like the Fed saying, you know what, we may need to raise by 0.25, well, I can tell you what, this thing is going to explode. Because the market's short and because, well, that's it, because the market's short and because they suggest that's what they're looking for. All right, so let me just get this thing geared up. So let me just come back to this. I'll just punch the, one of the guys might punch the thing in here. I'll just do it myself. Into Slack. You guys want to be looking at this page, right? This is the page to get up. All right. Don't forget what about trading Aussie yen for the rate? Yeah, definitely, Tim. Good point. Sorry, I missed that. The other guys should have chimed in there. Okay, you guys, just making sure. The team in here, a little bit hard of hearing. I'm only hearing in one ear today. It's amazing. It's amazing I can even trade, I can tell you. All right, so what we want to be doing here is just drop this down a touch. I'm going to be reading this. The currency's going to start flying around the place. Nick, if you want to look at the headlines. So there's two things here, right? So you'll see a bunch of headlines come out here about the Aussie, right? They'll cherry pick sentences out of that statement and throw them up. So the currency you can expect to whip around all over the place. What I want to be doing is I'll be reading it myself, right? So right on at 2:30, I'm going to be hitting refresh and seeing exactly what these lunatics have got to say, right? So we've got 30 seconds, and this is the plan. Don't forget that the first trade isn't always the best one. Now, this isn't as easy as an economic data release as well, okay? This is an RBA announcement. They can be a little bit loose, to say the least. And as Elizabeth pointed out there before we started, you know, the last one was a real bit of a disaster. So trim your trade size, and let's just have a look at this thing. So I'm just going to start refreshing in the hope that I get this thing early. And they're pretty good, these things. 5 seconds. Okay, we're in the 50s. Still in the 50s. Okay, it's out. No change in rate, so that's the main thing. So now it comes down to this statement. I haven't got it up here. It's just, okay, the guys are saying the same. Members also observe. Okay, there's that same sentences in there for about further easing. Yeah, that was in the last one as well. So this is actually in line. Okay, there's a new paragraph here. It's the second last one. The pace of growth in dwelling house prices is moderated and has remained mostly subdued. Well, was that in there as well? Was it? Okay, this is a full cut and paste. Nothing to get excited about. So market is already short. I can't see any reason why we should be buying it, to be honest, or selling at that point. And we are at these mixed levels. The board will continue to assess the outlook. Yeah, this is basically, they're not meeting till Feb. They are sitting on the fence. And if you have a look at this compared to the last one, they are exactly the same, which is one of those things. This is all about preparation, all right? You prepare for these announcements. And then if there is that one skew-if event, as we said, the declining commodity prices, if there is one skew-if event, then you are on this. This is about sort of understanding when to hit it and when not to. Technically, we don't have the ideal situation. Now, we already know the top side's been cleaned out. This is in the 70s. The only reason I can see at the moment is the fact that market's probably still sitting a little bit short. And we may see this thing have a little bit more of a run to the top side. So if you are short and you're hoping for dovish comments, you would be buying your Aussie dollars back. All right. Now, getting long on the back of that, well, has broken technically higher. That's one thing in the favour of the longs. And I don't mean long wins, in the long positions like that. Very good. I've got my junior trader next to me, Mr. Long. He loves getting long. Anyway, so looking at the Aussie here back in the 75s, Aussie yen still hasn't really, let me just move T-Rex out of the way, hasn't really punched through. As I said, there's no real clarity in this. What you should be doing is, just to calm yourself down, is have a look what's coming up, all right? Plan the next trade, start planning it straight away. I don't think there's enough in the Aussie to really get stuck into it. We do have some UK manufacturing data out, despite me trying to cancel the event this morning. And it's the start of the PMI data out of the UK. We've got manufacturing, then the next day we've got construction and then services. So the UK, sterling is the next major event. Aussie is back in the groove here. So nothing to see, nothing to get excited about. I wouldn't even throw two bob at it at this point. Okay, any questions there, chaps? People guess in the webinar. Any guests want to ask a question? Well, actually, one thing you need to do, if you are using T-Rex, right, and you have set up the crosses, make sure you remove those, because next time you go to hit T-Rex, it will double up on those trading opportunities. So let me just move T-Rex out of the way. Okay. Okay, this is a good question there, Alan. So what would be the sentiment for the RBA? Oh, definitely neutral. Yeah, definitely neutral. I'd say neutral, Alan, with a which one, mate? What's that? Neutral with a balance. Sorry. Well, they're sort of saying they've got room to cut. But they're saying they've got room to cut. They'll probably keep the market cool. They're so far away from being neutral. Dovish. So it's not dovish. They've got some comments in there which suggest that they have got room to move, but they are on hold. So definitely neutral. Yeah, I see what you mean there, Nick. Sorry about that. All right. Okay. So everyone's squared away with that. Now, where is that sucker now? It's 76. So it's slowly walking to the top side. It would suggest to me that the market is just squeezing. This is a short. People are short and they're scrambling to buy them back. There's no real high here on the top side. One of the things that you should be looking for is have a look across the currency pairs here and see where they are. Now, Euro had a nice little shot at 106 the figure. Looked like it was going to go for all money. It's now sitting around 80. That's probably the only currency that hasn't gone, but that would be under pressure to the top side. The market is very short. Look at sterling, Kiwi, Aussie, all sort of drifting to the top side. If anything, I like the look of dollar yen here, almost potentially for a buy here, back down towards this trend line and the bottom of the cloud. So they actually are coming in nicely here. I might actually look to buy, put an order on here on those puppies. I'll throw that in the trade zone there in a few minutes, guys. I definitely like the look of that. I'll just discuss it with the rest of the guys here. It's one of those things. This has got a really nice setup. What we should be trying to determine is, are we looking to get short here or long? I don't want to ask Mr. Long. He'll be getting long. All right, bit of humour there. I don't know if you got that. That's very funny. I'm not funny. Okay, all right, guys. That's pretty much it from us. This is a busy week, obviously culminating in the non-farm payrolls on Friday. So there's plenty of action. So don't worry. The Aussie hasn't really given us anything just yet, but there are other things moving around. So get ready to start placing some orders in the market and start making some coin. All right. Thank you. We'll see you later on. Cheerio.